So I'll start things off. I want to say hi. Thanks, welcome everyone. Thanks for showing up. As Jasmine said, there'll be 4 or 5 of us talking about sheds, and I get the joy of talking a little bit about the background and history of sheds, and I'd also like to share a little bit about myself, how I got into this. And I would say that it was pre-COVID, just pre-COVID, and I've been a member of men's peer support groups for a long, long time, but a lot of them were very much kind of in your face personal development ones, and I noticed that did not work for a lot of men. They would kind of get scared off. So I was looking around for either a group of men who met regularly for more conversational than confrontational work, and I bumped into a guy who was known to organize and be the guru for sheds, or for men's groups in Alberta. It happened to be Michael Hoyt, who's going to be talking to you later, and he told me about men's groups and about men's sheds. And so it was, and then COVID hit. So I was a member of an online shed in Edmonton for a couple of years while we had COVID. And then I met another one of our members started a shed coming out of that group. Another one of our members started a shed in Kenilworth Community League, Morris, who's also going to speak to you. And I kind of helped him with his shed, and then he came and helped me start a shed in Ritchie Community League. And that's kind of the way this grows organically. It's the sheds grow by word of mouth and by guys reaching out and sharing. So that's kind of how that's my experience of growing. And but going back to the original history, what is a men's shed? It's really just like that. It's a few guys who get together and decide that they want to do something. Maybe they meet over coffee, or maybe they have an idea already in mind. They want to do woodworking, or they want to fix bicycles, or they want to do some whatever, electronics. But they agree that it's really valuable to get together. And we always joke about it, but the most important tool in the workshop or in the shed is the pot of coffee. Everybody wants to show up for the coffee, have a chat, and then maybe get to work. And for me, it was that I certainly experienced, isolation during COVID. And that's what a lot of guys have found, that COVID just accentuated whatever the life situation was. And if they were isolated for some reason or another, come into the shed once a week or twice a week really reduce that isolation. We like to get together and talk together. And then we end up giving back to the community, of course, as guys do, because we like to build things, we like to be constructive, and we like to contribute. So many of the sheds start giving back to their communities in small and big ways. And I want to emphasize that it's peer support. We don't have a psychologist leading it's men talking to men. And that's really important. We're all peers. Didn't matter if we were doctors or lawyers or artists or whatever. When we come into the group, we're all equal. And old or young, what we share is that we're men. And I think that's really important. We all can build trust, and there's no hierarchy here. And the shed can look like a few members, as I said, or it can be over 100. We have some in Canada that are 120 or 130, and they have to divide up and meet 7 days a week. So that's the core thing. The shed is the group of guys. It's not a shed, by the way. So, but where do we meet? Well, what we want to set up, and it can look like any particular space environment, but it's a safe place for men to meet. It's a friendly place where men are welcomed in. And we meet, and we use the term shoulder to shoulder. We don't necessarily talk we kind of work on stuff and then start sharing things. So we use that shoulder to shoulder expression a lot. So they can start in church basements. They can start in community leagues. Somebody might have his own workshop or a garage where guys meet. And it can be in a senior's residence. There's a heck of a lot of seniors who are out there isolated with and having lost their tools but still having time on their hands. Sheds can be independent and completely self-funded, or they can be funded by a local service agency. Like one of our first ones in Camrose in Alberta, I believe, is supported by a local charity. So there's two factors there, and we, at least I think of them both equally. One of them, somebody else is taking care of the administration, and in the independent one, we're taking care of our own administration. But they're both groups of men getting together, and we consider them both to be sheds. And I will say that it's, at least in Canada and maybe around the world, but in Canada, there's more in small rural communities where the guys tend to know each other, and guess what? They tend to have an unused garage or warehouse or something where they can meet and get together. And so they don't have to deal with the rent problems that we would have in, say, downtown Edmonton, where if you want a nice big building, you got to pay through the nose for it. So, and by the way, I did an interview. We don't build sheds. I occasionally get requests, well, how much would it be for an 8x10? And that's not something that we do typically, anyhow. So that's where we meet. And I do want to say there's Wayne's big building in Cold Lake, where you can see all the men doing all various activities, tons of space, lots of activity. What a great space to have. History of men's sheds started about 25, 30 years ago in Australia, where I want to emphasize this. It was a seniors organizer or coordinator, Max, a woman, noticed that some of the treatment for women in the seniors organization wasn't really working for men. They were left out for whatever reason. And so she decided that we need to take a different approach for men. And so she called it a men's shed. And it's not about sheds as we think of them. Shed means a workshop in Australia. So that's how we got the name. So that was way back in 2007. And they started an association to spread the word all over Australia. And they now have 1,200 sheds. New Zealand, similarly, they're nearby. They started about 2013, 135 sheds. United Kingdom and Ireland. I was just in the United Kingdom. I visited a few sheds. And they're just like Canadian sheds, but they got way more of them. I guess because they're a little denser and close packed in. Between them, they got 1,500 sheds. And then the word is starting to get out in the US and through Europe and even into Africa. There's a few sheds. And look at all the different, and we say every shed is different. Look at all their logos. They're all designed. They're all about men, but they're all different. Next slide, please. So men's sheds in Canada was... we got a guy named Doug Mackey who was hugely influential, not only in Canada, but to everybody he talks to around the world even. He's so enthusiastic about men's sheds, and he speaks from experience, and he started many, many sheds himself. And he did it on the probing of his daughter, who said, you say it's a good idea, you should start it. So he did. And but he jokes that, men's sheds are to women. There were some of our biggest supporters are females. And so he's in Manitoba, but we now have about 70 in Canada, 30 in BC, Manitoba 12. We got lots in about almost 20 in Alberta. And we're now starting to form provincial associations, because having a national organization is good for funding and maybe appealing to the national government. But locally, the more local you get, the more the impact is on the ground. And so there's 3 or 4 provincial associations now starting to work within their provinces. Men's Sheds Canada, which I have been a part of, we incorporated just a couple of years ago. We have our vision is a shed for every man who wants one. That's a huge vision. Hopefully it'll come true in 10 years. But we're serving to try to connect sheds. We live in a connected world. So we're hoping that by connecting sheds, we can grow faster. And we have lots of programs on for seeking federal funding, national funding, starting provincial associations. The last slide, please, for me. Men's Sheds in Alberta. So Punch, who's on this call and organized this meeting, started working with the Living Hope folks for suicide prevention many years ago. And Amanda, who is also on this call today, was influential in starting our first 2 sheds in Edmonton. And so again, women are big supporters of men's sheds, and we had one in Camrose. And then Wayne, who's on the call, I attended the Cold Lake Shed Happens conference. Shed Happens, it's a play on words. And that brought together a whole lot of people from Sheds, but also from FCSS and Family, Children, and Support Services. And we were all inspired, like just getting together. There's so much energy that happens. So that was a big conference. I think it was very successful. We now have 20 sheds in Alberta, lots in Edmonton, Calgary, Cold Lake, a new one in Jasper, and we got potential sheds cropping up in all sorts of small places that we're hearing about. So that's the history. That's what I wanted to present. There's a whole lot of more administrative information I could present, but that's where we've come to for now. Before I hand it over to Morris, are there any questions about the history or the organization? And I should mention that Wayne is the president of our provincial association. And so if not, I'll just, I don't see anything in chat. Pass it over to Morris and we'll continue.
Hello, I'm Morris Reed. I'm the president of Southeast YEG Men's Shed. We are located in Kenilworth Community League in Edmonton. Our shed started beginning of August a year ago. And I come from a background of trades, and I've worked as an electrician for over 40 years. And in that time, I also got into project management and planning and scheduling. I'm here to talk about why men's sheds. First of all, meetings, a respectful and inclusive place that provides an opportunity for men to share experiences with other members of the community. Coffee, water, and cookies are ready and waiting for anyone that walks in the door. Sheds can schedule their meetings multiple times per week, once a week, bi-weekly, or even monthly. It all depends on the availability of the members and the facility where the meetings are held. For 5 months, we met weekly before cleaning out a storage room and acquiring the tools to set up a workshop. We then incorporated working on projects after our coffee meeting, and we've also added additional times for project work when the hall is available for it. Presentations. Many sheds use presentations to inform membership and anyone from the community of some of the hot topics we face as we age. Our main source for speakers has been the University of Alberta. Some of the topics we've had are healthy aging, chronic pain, Alzheimer's, the history of Edmonton, Criminal Youth Justice Act, balancing your digital life, and vertigo. Paint night. Multiple sheds have provided paint nights to give a different experience for shedders to enjoy. The results have been amazing as everyone has their own perspective on what they are looking at and how it is represented on the canvas. Father's Day event. Hosting a Father's Day this year, we wanted to include the entire family by having games and activities while learning about men's shed. There were hot dogs, donuts, soft drinks for everyone to enjoy, plus for the kids, a race car to assemble, and then race on a track that was built just for the event. Community events. Setting up an information table or a tent, depending on where the event is located. We provide brochures, information packages, and personal conversation about men's sheds. Some of the locations we have attended in the past year are the Southeast Edmonton Skate Park grand opening, Syncunia Community Summer Festival, City Hall's Men's Information Programs Day, Dickensfield Care Center, Bent Arrow Traditional Healing Society, Northeast Edmonton Seniors Association, and volunteering at various community league events. Community collaboration. The Edmonton Federation of Community Leagues connected with Men's Sheds Association of Edmonton. We help them by repairing and refurbishing carnival games at multiple shed locations. EFCL has provided connections to both Ritchie and South Clairview as new shed locations. We have and can provide support and information to help groups interested in how to start a shed. Beaumont Shed has worked closely with the food bank in their area, helped with projects in their building and fundraising and providing workers at events. Second Chance Animal Rescue Society, the doghouse build. Men's Sheds provided material and manpower to build 3 insulated doghouses with representatives of SCARS. We took this opportunity to use the Ritchie Community League as the building location to introduce the community to men's sheds, resulting in a successful opening of a new shed at that location. Community or projects for community organizations. Men's Shed Association acquired funding for the materials, and Southeast YEG Men's Shed assembled and delivered 6 picnic tables, 2 raised garden boxes, 6 benches for the Nigadan housing ventures between 2 buildings, 5 benches for Symphonia Community Organization for use around their community garden. And we made a cornhole game and new Jenga blocks for EFCL's rental games program. Projects from the community or from the workshop. The workshop can vary from shed to shed, depending on what the memberships decide. Calgary, for example, has a bike shed and a tech shed. Innisfail Shed has made mini book libraries that look like granaries. Westland Shed has arranged tours to various sites for the members to enjoy. Workshops have produced crib boards, several styles of benches, picnic tables, cabinets, an ice fishing shack, comfort birds, and a multitude of other things. And the comfort birds you see in the kind of the center top photo, they're hard to pick out, but they're in a very interesting thing to hand out to seniors. You can see from the slides, there are many things happening in sheds around the province, the country, and the world. By adding your voice to a shed, you can grow the men's shed movement. And I would like to ask if there's any questions. And if not, I will introduce the next presenter, Michael Hoyt. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Morris. I'm here to talk about the impact, and I think we can simply go back and look at your photographs and recognize the pride, the pleasure, the sense of accomplishment in men, and have a full understanding of the impact of sheds. My name is Michael. Brian said the lovely words about being the guru of men's supports in the province. Brian has also called me an elder, which I particularly like, as I am getting older right now, and I can talk from that position of experience. My introduction to men's sheds happened in 2011 when I was tasked with going out. I worked for the city of Edmonton. I'm a social worker, and I was tasked with going out and finding out how we could support the community and build their capacity to support men in building healthy relationships. And I interviewed lots of agencies, but it was a lit review that I conducted that mentioned men's sheds in Australia that just put a gift into my hand. What a wonderful way of engaging men. And I'd like to talk about those benefits for just a few minutes here with you. Now, imagine yourself in this picture that that chair, first of all, is occupied by a new shedder. He receives some immediate benefits from sitting there. We call these the downstream benefits. But you could also imagine that chair as being something that we are occupying. We're in that strange fourth dimension where we as a community are the occupants of that chair. We also benefit from men's sheds. And we call these the upstream benefits. So benefits that happen to individual members in the short term in easy observable ways, we call them downstream benefits. and the positive long-term impacts of a project or an intervention that benefits the broader community, we call upstream benefits. And I'd like to take a look at both of these if we can. Next slide. Now, I won't be talking an awful lot about the research into the sheds, although my talk is entirely supported by the research, but I won't get into particular studies. We were told when we first began looking into sheds that sheds are simplicity in action, but nobody told us that they are complexity in impact. There is a lot happening in men's sheds. Now, Brian and Morris have already alluded to some of the characteristics that make men's sheds difficult to evaluate. I'll just quickly go through them over again. No two sheds are alike, and they're all self-organized. So there's no sort of a simple model that you can be evaluating. As Brian mentioned, they take place in diverse settings. They're in informal workshops, they're in public areas, they're in museums, they're on Zoom, they're in neighbors' garages, they're all over the place. And shedders don't sign up for a formal program. They come and they go as they please, ideally in a shed. And the positive health comes sometimes in unexpected ways. So sometimes I've had one fellow told me that showing up at the men's shed was the best part of his day because he got to ride on the bus. And that was a sightseeing experience for him. And that started his day in such a wonderful way. So you never quite know how sheds are going to benefit. So is there any good research supporting sheds? Well, yes, there is. And I'll just direct you to a book called Shoulder to Shoulder, Broadening the Men's Shed Movement by Barry Golding. Barry Golding. He's an Australian professor of adult education, community and adult education, and he's looked at men's sheds for a long time. He's sort of the patron of men's sheds movements worldwide. And he published in 2021 that very readable book that I've just mentioned, Shoulder to Shoulder, Broadening the Men's Shed Movement. And he reviewed 131 case studies worldwide, including 5 studies from Canada. And I'll talk briefly about one of those studies in a little while. But if you want to see some of the evidence that's being gathered by the academic community, it is gathered, does exist. Let's go on to the next slide. I want to talk about the downstream benefits first. Now, remember that I mentioned the downstream benefits are the immediate observable sort of benefits that happen to sheds. And you can see all the smiling faces and sense of satisfaction in the men in these pictures here. They're enjoying improved mental, physical, and emotional health by virtue of being in each other's company. They're engaged in learning, lifelong learning. Sheds have been described as adult education designed by men for men. And I think that's so true. Other models don't always appeal to men, but this is a way of gathering men and helping them to get immersed into adult education and lifelong. And there's a reduced reliance on healthcare services in a shed because men take care of themselves and they take care of each other. And this supports the growing practice of social prescribing, which we'll talk about in a little bit here. So if you imagine a large, healthy, vigorous tree, the downstream benefits are the flourishing leaves on that tree. And they represent the visible well-being and growth of individual shedders. Characteristics like physical health, reduced reliance on healthcare services, lifelong learning are like the tree's healthy green leaves. And to support that growth of a healthy canopy, we need strong roots. So let's have a look at the next slide. When we talk about good root development in our men's shed analogy, we're looking at the upstream benefits of men's sheds. The root system in a healthy tree provides a strong, healthy base on which participants flourish. You can see the flourishing in these pictures here. I think the picture, the one on the left is on our City Hall downtown Edmonton. That's a diversity of men in range. I bet the range there is close to 30, 40 years from the fellow in the front all the way to the guy in the back there. So a diversity of men of all ages. You can see those men are actually sitting, or a group, men and women, are sitting on benches that were constructed by men's sheds. And the community is as diverse as you can hope for in a cosmopolitan center like Edmonton. And in the final one there's men engaged in healthy activity. That's actually a diversity of men's shedders as well. I believe the fellow in the middle is a New Zealand shedder who showed up to one of our meetings as an invited guest. And we're cleaning out the space that Morris had mentioned there that became the workshop for the men's shed in the community league in the Southeast. So wonderful examples of upstream benefits. Let me just talk about what we're seeing here. We're creating opportunities for social interaction and connection. We're developing, and I think this is a wonderful word, we're developing camaraderie, which we also call friendship and mutual trust. And in that sort of an environment, barriers begin to drop and guys really begin to talk about the things that are on their mind, including how do they access emotional support? Where do they go when they're feeling down? Those barriers drop. Men will talk about those sorts of things with each other. They're engaged in skill development. Those benches aren't holding people up because they were built with anything except an awful lot of care and skill and good wood. Camaraderie reduces the barriers to creating a supportive and inclusive environment. And these barriers could include social isolation, a lack of purpose, the stigma around mental health, ageism and stereotypes. I could go on and on and talk about the experience of men when they leave the workforce and no longer have that structure in which to hang what they've learned about how to be a man and prove that they're men, earning a good income and doing hard work and things like that. When they leave that workforce, those sorts of structures are absent for them, and they have to find new ways of establishing how they are worthwhile human beings. So in summary, when we're considering men's sheds, we have to consider the upstream benefits, which include building a strong foundation of skills and a sense of community, and the downstream benefits that focus on leveraging this foundation for social support, community engagement, and healthy aging. Let's move on there. Yeah, because I know we're all health-minded in this group here. I thought I would just point out that men's sheds also are intimately connected to the social determinants of health, which are the conditions which people are born, grow, live, work, and age. These determinants significantly influence our health outcomes. So our employment and social status is important. And men's sheds serve as places where retired or unemployed men can engage in meaningful work and contribute their skills. It gives them a sense of purpose and status through contributing back to their community. Men's sheds provide education. They promote continuous learning, often providing men will gather and say, well, we ought to be learning a little bit about I don't know, our plumbing problems. Let's get some expert in here that can kind of talk to us as a group and help us understand a bit more about what's going on. But those sorts of things happen all the time in men's sheds. Sheds are importantly very inclusive, and that's an extremely important aspect of sheds. I'll talk about that a bit more in just a second. They provide access to health services, not because they are in and themselves healthcare places, but they do host events on workshops or invite people in to better inform them. But it allows guys to feel comfortable around the discussion of those health issues and reduce the stigma of having to say, gee, I don't feel quite right. I'm feeling kind of weak. What can I do about that? And we have already learned that the physical environment is very important. And you've seen pictures of guys working outside, building gardens and other environmental projects and just being joyfully engaged in their physical community. So let's just go on to the next slide there and see what Grandpa Simpson has to say about the barriers. He's very afraid of men's sheds in this slide here. And the reason is he's asking, well, would I be weird if I show up at a men's shed, if I need to actually hang around other guys? Does that mean that I'm broken in some sort of way? If I need help, is it all going to be on me, or do I have a chance to sort of show people what I can do and give back to others as well? And will I be less of a man if I ask for help? But this is a result, of course, of our socialization as men in all around the world, really, that we are taught to be independent and strong and never need breaking, always being there to give, but never required or never seen fit to ask for help when we need help. And that comes through the social norms that are all across, embedded in everything that we do. It comes through media and pop culture. Through peer pressure, through our upbringing, all these factors create barriers to actually looking after ourselves as we get older. So let's see what men's sheds do to reduce barriers in the next slide. Well, sheds open the doors. They provide informal spaces, self-organizing spaces, hosted, not led spaces. And why is that important? Well, it reduces the pressure to conform on men. It's a relaxed atmosphere. It's easier for men to share the concerns inside a shed. And because sheds are hosted rather than led, there's no authority sort of a structure there that the men need to feel they need to fit into. And that fosters a sense of equality and shared responsibility in the shed. So that's one way in which sheds reduce barriers. Of course, the inclusive nature of sheds challenges all sorts of stereotypes, and it encourages acceptance of different perspectives. And it helps men to feel comfortable in seeking support, because we can see that others might need support as well, and they're okay. Maybe I'll be okay as well if I do that. They offer education, but in non-structured ways, which is really important for men. Men don't sit well in classroom sorts of settings and take notes. They learn in more informal, indirect kind of ways. And they're safe places where participants can discuss their mental and emotional well-being and reduce the stigma associated with seeking mental health. What's really important there, of course, is that men can see others are open about their struggles, and that makes them more willing, and they're willing to help one another. So other men seem to be having struggles. They have scars. They're getting through life. I have some scars. I seem to be struggling. I could work with this group and see where I can take myself in a better way. So in summary, these characteristics make men's sheds welcoming, non-judgmental, and supportive environments. Let's pop on down to the next slide there. I want to introduce you to Rick, he's truly a hero of mine. Rick attended one of the first sheds that started in Edmonton at Sage, but had help from Amanda in starting. And he was directed to a table where we were all gathered, all of us wannabe shedders, and we were talking about the problem of the bees, the terrible plight of bees in Edmonton, and how they had no place to home themselves, and wouldn't it be great if we could construct bee houses? We were all about that sort of thing. The interesting thing was that none of us are builders, none of us have any woodworking skills, and we didn't have a woodworking shop either. So Rick's introduced to us as somebody that would really benefit from being in a circle, and he just fits right in. You can see how he shows up. I think that's the very first day with him standing outside with his red buggy there. It might have been the second shed meeting. Within a couple of weeks, he's actually at a conference where he's presenting on men's sheds and inviting the public to step up and just having informal conversations with them. And then he's teaching people how to build the bee houses in the final question. We never successfully built bee houses, but we gave it a lot of effort. Now, I think what's interesting about Rick, as I got to know him, he shared with me his story of how he came here, and it happened post-retirement. After retirement, he didn't know what to do with himself anymore and just isolated himself, and he began drinking and not feeding himself very well, and it ultimately led to him being hospitalized. And in the hospital, they were able to treat the effects of alcohol, and they were able to get his body rebuilt and all the vitamins and nutrition back into him. But the hospital didn't know how to give him back his zest for life. And he was sent to somebody who knew about men's sheds and said, you know, that's a place you need to go, because those are guys that are interested in living, and I think you really benefit from there. So Rick told me, he said, you know, when I retired, I forgot all about how to look after myself. And I think that's what happens when we retire. We don't remember how to look after ourselves, and we don't remember how to look after other people as well. And that's just happening here in the sheds. So we told him we're all about bees down here, and he laughed and said, I'm a carpenter by trade, retired carpenter, and I figured out how to carry a woodworking shop in my red bag. And he had every tool one could possibly need to build bee houses inside that red bag. And he became famous for toting that bag around. And it was him that told me that coming to men's sheds has benefited me in all sorts of unexpected ways, including I get out of the house now and I get on the bus, and I just really enjoy driving downtown, having some place to go and seeing all the sights. And sadly, Rick passed away in 2020. But his family found us and just said how grateful they were for the change, the benefits we had done to their uncle in giving him back his life. And they thanked us by giving us his tools. So that was the very first case of social prescription that I was ever aware of in Edmonton. And I was fully moved by it and convinced that's something that we're going to see more of in this world. So what kind of people benefit from sheds? Who would you think of socially prescribing to a shed? Well, here are some of the characteristics. This is the only research I'm citing today. This is a Canadian study, the processes of involvement of older male adults in men's shed community programs. And what the research have found out is that individuals that come to sheds like to keep busy, they like to challenge themselves, and they're pro-social. They really value connections and care for the welfare of other people, or they like to have those opportunities of doing things for other people. And they may have gone through some sort of life transition, such as retirement or housing relocation, lost their workspaces. They may have become widowed, or they may have divorced and they're feeling isolated. But they still have people in their lives that care about them. There's friends, family, and in the case of Rick, a social worker who cares about them and can direct them on. So those are the kinds of conditions you might look for to find a man who would benefit from sheds. So in closing, men's sheds contribute to healthy aging and living well in a number of ways. And I'll just mention to them through social interaction. They foster social connections, reduce loneliness and isolation. They provide an opportunity for skill development. Members acquire new skills, and that promotes cognitive stimulation and improves their self-esteem because they're learning things. Gives them physical activity. It encourages them to look after their mental well-being. There's emotional support present in groups. They're not stress-free, but reduced stress environments and just good conditions for guys to feel comfortable and to grow. And they provide a purpose and meaning in the lives of men. So that's the kick that we get back in terms of healthy aging from men's sheds. And having said that, I'd like to pass it over to my friends Punch and Wayne to just tell us where we might be going with men's sheds. Why invite the CORE group to our meeting here? Thank you.
You're muted, Punch.
Good morning. I'm Punch Jackson. I've been involved with the men's shed movement since I retired in 2009, and I started a newspaper called Men's Sheds Across the World, which told stories about what was happening in sheds all across the globe. I was back in Winnipeg in 2012 and had breakfast with Doug Mackey, and he convinced me that I should get back to Edmonton and start sheds in Edmonton. So I went back and figured out what my pitch would be, and I talked to Scott McKean, who was a newly elected councillor, and he had responsibility for a file called social isolation, I think, and mental health. And Scott became our champion, and he got us involved with a project called the Living Hope Suicide Prevention Strategy. And in that, when that report was finalized, there was a small phrase that mentioned men's shed. And all it said was that men's sheds were a promising practice for suicide prevention. And that was really the springboard that got us rolling in Edmonton. And that's when Michael and I hooked up and began our journey together. And we worked away at trying to find different strategies to start sheds in Edmonton. And then in the fall of 2016, Amanda joined us. And it was her energy that and enthusiasm for sheds that really got the first two sheds going. She was the one who went out and got the shed started in Northeast Edmonton, and she also helped get the shed started in downtown Edmonton. The growth of sheds was slow. We had about 6 sheds when COVID hit. COVID took a big chunk out of our shed world, but we had 1 shed stayed active, and they went virtual, and they had over 100 presentations during COVID, and that again was a bit of a life raft for us. And as we came out of COVID, we got new energy, and we had started the Men's Sheds Edmonton group, and we used that as an umbrella to help support shed development in Edmonton. We now have 7 sheds in the capital region, as Brian said earlier, and we're moving ahead very enthusiastically. We had a presentation yesterday on CBC from the Rural Sustainability Group at Augustana College, and they talked about some of the research that they'd been doing and how beneficial it would be for sheds in rural Alberta. So how did we come to today and this concept of having a core group. We had done a presentation about 2 years ago where the CORE Healthy Aging Alberta gave us a 2-hour spot to talk about men's sheds. Well, based on the response to that, they've asked us to create a men's core group that would be available on their site, and we would be responsible for conducting webinars, providing resources, things like that. And the key thing is, based on the feedback that we got, that the need to heighten awareness of men's sheds across Alberta with all kinds of different groups. In this particular case, it may be healthcare professionals, anyone really working with seniors in any capacity. The concept would be that we would provide webinars, resources, stories, research, validation tools for people who needed to know what the background was on research, to work with community collaborator groups like FCSS, social workers, the Edmonton Federation of Community Leagues, Rotary clubs, Lions clubs, women's groups. What we felt was that the core group would be a place for sharing and supporting people who were interested in developing sheds. So what we're offering today is an invitation to all of you to join the core group. You could be a participant. You could be a contributor. What we plan to offer on the site is presentation themes that could be how to start a men's shed, finding leaders, promoting sheds, creating community engagements through having guest speakers come in, people talking specifically to the guys in sheds and hearing what they get out of it. What's the benefit to them? What's the benefit to their families? What's the benefit to the community? And some of them may talk about being the guy that doesn't do anything in the shed except drink coffee and talk to the guys. The establishment of startup kits would be available through the core group. Templates for different types of brochures, posters. You'd be able to borrow materials. Could borrow display materials that you could use in the community. There would be discussions about how you can find and support leaders we could do training sessions right in your community, workshops and conferences, and be mentors to those of you who would like to take on the challenge of trying to facilitate shed development in Alberta. I think there's no easy way to start sheds, and starting sheds is not something that happens overnight. So I think being able to talk about setting realistic expectations and finding out what are some of the shortcuts, what are some of the barriers that you're going to run into, these would all be things that would be available on the core site. The sharing of stories, talking about where does social prescription fit into this? What do sheds need to do if they're going to be involved with social prescription? These are all, I think, exciting things that help to move the shed development process forward. But being an opportunity to provide unique experiences for men who may have time on their hands. They may have suffered from the loss of their friendship circle when they retired. So many different things that could be available on the site. And we're looking forward to providing that support for you, and hope that you will join us in becoming a member of the CORE group. Now, I'm going to pass this to my colleague, Wayne, who is the president of the Alberta Men's Shed Association, and he will give you a little bit of a snippet on what that organization is going to do for shed development in Alberta and provide support to the CORE group. Wayne?
Thanks, Punch, and thank you, Brian, Michael, and Morris for your contribution to our startup today. I'm going to give you a bit of a background for myself. And I started with 4 other guys. We were sitting in Timmy's one day and decided that we should start a shed in Cold Lake. And it's not uncommon for this method of starting a shed. We in Cold Lake, it's primarily a military community, and civilian employees, when they retire, lose access to the base. So many of the guys that yesterday were working with 30 guys in one of the hangars or whatever, today all of a sudden have no connection whatsoever to the workplace. And the 4 of us were sitting there, and we sort of reminisced a bit about a couple of friends or associates that over the years have ended up either with an alcohol problem or an isolation problem, which resulted in them losing their retirement. What should have been another 20 years of happy life turned into 2 short or 3 short years of losing their life. When we considered this, we started looking around to see what we could do, and through the generous contribution of a local businessman, he donated a truck bay to us to use as a home. And we went on from there and managed to create some excitement here in Cold Lake. And through the use of grants, set up a shed and ended up with initially about 30 or 35 attendees. And then, of course, COVID struck, and we've gone a bit back from that. But anyway, that also led then to working with Men's Shed Alberta, because we felt that we could contribute a bit to the startup of sheds. And what we did was bring ourselves under the umbrella. So we're of age-friendly Cold Lake. So we're one of the sheds that works in association and under the sponsorship of another organization in the town. By doing so, they have covered our insurance, provide administration's benefits, and that sort of thing as a shed. We felt then that perhaps we could contribute, so we held a conference in October 2022, and ended up with about 45 participants, which, as was pointed out by Brian, sort of kicked off a bit more interest in the organization. In starting up with Alberta Men's Sheds, what we've got going at the moment, more than anything, is to provide support for startups. We're in the process of creating brochures and working through FCSS in Alberta, the library organizations, and anybody else that will listen to us, spread the word on sheds and reach out. In doing so, what we've sought is to have materials prepared that would provide, for instance, a local FCSS with a startup kit, so that anybody that wants to start a shed can have a connection to either through their FCSS if they want to become a shed under an organization, or through Alberta Men's Sheds, we'll provide material that can get them underway. We'll provide information for grants that are available. Brian has pointed out that Men's Shed Canada has grants and is working towards national grants. Excuse me. Part of our reach out has been through these organizations. And the other part of the reach out we've done is we found that wives are a key portion of having men show up in men's sheds. They just get tired of having a guy sitting around the house and encourage him to get out. Yeah, in our shed yesterday, we had a wife drag a man in and tell him that he was joining our shed. After an hour and a half of wandering around in the shed, he promised to be back the next day. So by contacting us through any of the ones that are on here with us today, or through the Alberta Men's Shed website, or through email, we look forward to having you join us and find out what men's sheds are all about. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. So we do have a bit of time for questions. I know the guys didn't mention this, but one thing I did want to share with you all is that the next session that the Men's Sheds Core Group will be hosting is going to be on how to start a shed. So if you have not already, I would really encourage you to go to our CORE Alberta website. I put it in the chat, and sign up for the Men's Sheds Core Group. Yeah, you'll be able to be invited to come to the next session where they dive into how to start a shed, what does that look like, and all those kinds of details. And the core group is also where, like Punch said, you're going to be able to find all those resources to be able to support you on your journey to start a shed if that's something that you're really interested in doing in your community. So with that being said, are there any questions from anyone who is here about sheds? And if there are, if you could just raise your hand for me and I will invite you to unmute. Laura, yes.
Hi, I really didn't want to be the first person asking a question, but luck of the draw, I guess. I think this is an awesome idea. And I understand that there is a huge need for social support for men, middle-aged and older men. So I want to acknowledge that I totally get the need for this. And I think it's, it's a terrific program. Today is in the middle of the week of Trans Awareness Week. And as a trans person myself and the parent of a trans person, when things are identified as just for men, it's extremely triggering. And I'm just wondering, I thought that there was going to be some discussion of diversity and inclusion because one of the presenters mentioned that, the social worker, I think it was, I don't remember the name, I'm sorry, Michael, I think it was. I thought that when you said that there was going to be a discussion of inclusion, I thought that maybe that was going to be part of it, but it wasn't, which is fine. I mean, I just want people to think about how words can create barriers and how a lot of people who don't identify as men could benefit from this sort of thing. I have been involved in community activism and social work for decades. And I recognize the value of being able to do things with your hands and do projects with people, to be able to create different ways of interacting with each other and understand ourselves and each other better. Totally. But what tends to happen, because this is something that's recognized in the social work world, is, but what tends to happen is a huge division. It's like, I had a friend who ran a support group for women who were struggling with domestic violence, and they made jewelry. So if you were somebody who was struggling with domestic violence and you liked making jewelry, awesome. But if that's something that just was like, no interest in jewelry, I don't wear jewelry, I don't like jewelry, blah, blah, it's like you feel like excluded and there's no other place to go. So I guess, sorry for this long-winded, but anyway, I'm just wondering, like, what has any consideration been put into diversity in terms of gender diversity and inclusion in this program? So I'm just curious as to what's been going on and what people might be willing to talk about if nothing has been done yet in that arena. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing, Laura. Michael, did you want to provide a comment on that?
Absolutely. And Laura, thank you so much, because I really think your question is to a really important point. And the word men is certainly not the most inclusive of language. A couple of observations, and I think Brian might be able to even add a bit more to this. I know the Men's Shed movement, much better established in Australia and Great Britain, has really looked at the importance of living by that word inclusive, and has opened it up to has opened the idea that men's sheds are really open to everybody, all genders, all people interested in being part of that sort of environment are welcome to be in those sorts of environments. I think we're a bit slow still in Canada in getting to the point where we're a bit more careful with that language. So I really do I appreciate your push in that direction. That being said, one of the struggles, of course, with men always is that unless you name something as something for men, our socialization tends to teach us not to hear that this is for them at all, and we tend not to look in those directions. So it's a bit of a balancing act for me right there, right now. How do we, as we're starting up men's sheds, ensure that the value of inclusiveness is recognized and promoted, and also the mission to try and get in this very hard to reach group, which is men, right? It's a real balancing act. And I think your question just reminds us we don't quite have that magic yet, where we need to be continually reminded that we have to work in those directions. So I'm just very appreciative of your questions and your sharing with us. Thank you. I don't know if others would like to add to that. Might be Brian, you may have a thought on that as well.
Yeah, I really appreciate you bringing this up, Laura, because we have had discussions at the national level for sure, where we don't tell sheds what to do, but we want to be inclusive. We want to, and so it's funny, we're just, the organization is kind of starting because there's so few resources for men to get together and do what we do. And so there's value in that. And yet, how can we be more inclusive? And some of the answers are that many sheds do include women sometimes to come in and in various functions and contribute. Some of the sheds put on workshops to be inclusive for younger men and women and anybody who wants to come in. And some sheds are big enough that they can start a she shed or a women's shed. So while we're starting, from this baseline of this is our definition is that we want to support men. We also want to support everybody else that we work with. This is a community endeavor. So it's not an easy answer. And so what we've said is we include anybody who identifies as a man that's kind of the bottom line, but every shed is different, and many sheds, you'll see the pictures. Often there's women in the picture. So that's my short answer. But thank you for bringing up the topic.
Thanks, Laura.
I think,
sorry, Punch, did you want to say something quickly too?
I think the bottom line is we want to be inclusive. In many cases, we need help to reach that target, that goal. And so people like Laura could be helpful to us in terms of helping us navigate through this so that we are living up to the values and beliefs about being inclusive. Because in many ways, we don't understand how to reach out to different cultural groups, how to reach out to people who don't who are identifying as men, the trans community, and we need help with that. And I think that by admitting that and trying to strive for that goal is vital for us. And so, Laura, if you want to leave your contact information to help us with that particular topic, we would really appreciate it.
I really appreciate everybody's response. This is so gratifying. I have a little bit of experience in a similar type of program in the US and in Quebec, community bike workshops. And one of the things that that it seems to be common in community bike workshops in North America is something that they call WTF night, which is Women Trans Femme. And it's for people, who identify as people who have traditionally been kind of excluded from using tools, for example, to be able to, feel more comfortable. I also, in Montreal, I helped organize a conference about community living, and we were labeling the bathrooms. And I really liked the way that they labeled the organizers labeled the bathrooms. Instead of men, women, it was this bathroom has a urinal. This bathroom does not have a urinal. You could use whatever bathroom you wanted. And I do believe, I do agree that that there are certain issues that pertain particularly to people in their 50s and 60s and 70s who have penises, right? There's prostate issues and things like that, right? That certainly go to the more biological. There could be ways of labeling things that that would allow people to be able to feel more included, I think. And I definitely would be happy to continue this conversation. I'm just thinking out loud right now, so I won't waste any more time, but thank you so much.
Thanks, Laura, for taking the time and having the courage to say something at our group today. We really do appreciate hearing from you. We are over time now, but are there any other questions from folks that are on today? I put a link to a survey in the chat about today's event. And I will send an email out after the event with a link to register for the CORE Alberta Group so that you may join the Men's Shed Alberta Group on CORE. And also there will be a link to the survey, but I will just, if there's anyone else who might like to ask a question or make a comment on today's session, I would invite you to do that now, and otherwise I'll end today.
May I ask a quick question?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, I'm a seniors program coordinator with Canmore FCSS, and thank you guys for the awesome presentation. Men's Sheds have been on my radar for many years now. I'm just kind of curious, like, what you've seen FCSS's involvement with men's sheds to this date. Like, I know they're not led, like they're peer led. So Has FCSS's involvement been more from like a community development kind of aspect of like bringing folks together, like finding those leaders, you know, helping, you know, find grants? Kind of what has FCSS done to help Sheds so far? Thank you.
Who would like to speak to that, guys?
I got my hand up there.
Oh, Wayne. Oh, I thought you were clapping, Wayne. Okay, yes, go ahead.
The FCS conference is coming up in next week, as a matter of fact, and we will be represented there, and we're trying to get the brochures all finished up and everything, and provide information for FCSs on how to start a shed and how to work with the shed. So the people that Punch will be one of the ones there. I believe Brian's probably going to be there, maybe Morris. And if you look up one of them at our table there, I'm sure they'll be able to provide you with further information on what's happening and the association through FCSS.
I'll be there. See you there, Wayne.
Lou, we've been working with the four directors from across Alberta to develop the resource on starting a shed. And it's not just the mechanics of how you start a shed, but how some of the information related to the internal operation of FCSS and how to facilitate things administratively from the inside of the organization. So that will be part of the kit that would be available next week. So that we've had a success with a number of sheds across the province, Vermilion, Beaumont, Cochrane. I'm trying to think of some of the other FCSS sponsored sheds. Their Valley View is coming on stream. So
Canmore.
that Canmore, yes.
Camrose is one too.
Camrose is the original shed in Alberta, is sponsored by an FCSS organization. So anyway, we'll look forward to seeing you next week at the conference.
Great. I'll see you there. Thank you.
Any other final questions or thoughts? Seeing none, I would just like to thank you on behalf of the guys. Thank you so much for attending today's Men's Shed CORE launch. This has been a launch that I think, Punch, I feel like it was probably a year ago that you and I first met to talk about, and even before that, to talk about having a core group for men's sheds. And so it's very exciting for us to be able to launch this today, and we're so excited to have your core group. So thank you all for joining us and for being interested in men's sheds and helping the guys to start to grow this movement more across the province. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week, and we will be in touch with some more information soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks for